President Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the Iran nuclear deal on May 8th in a unilateral act of aggression that was widely condemned by the international community. In the following weeks, the Trump administration continued to ramp up its hostility against Iran. In a May 21st speech at the right-wing corporate-funded think tank, the Heritage Foundation, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declared that the U.S. is imposing, quote, the strongest sanctions in history.
We will apply unprecedented financial pressure on the Iranian regime. This sting of sanctions will be painful if the regime does not change its course. These will indeed end up being the strongest sanctions in history when we are complete. After our sanctions come in force, it will be battling to keep its economy alive.
These concerted attempts to isolate and strangle Iran are quite clearly part of a larger goal: regime change in Tehran. Although members of the Trump administration have denied that this is on the agenda, the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, let the cat out of the bag. Just a few days before Trump announced his decision to sabotage the nuclear deal, Giuliani openly boasted that the U.S. president wants regime change.
We've got a president who's tough, a president who doesn't listen to the people who are naysayers, and a president that is as committed to regime change as we are.
Giuliani made these remarks at a May 5th gathering of the MEK, a cultish Iranian opposition group that is dedicated to overthrowing the government in Tehran. Trump's lawyer boasted of the extreme anti-Iran war hawks the U.S. president has surrounded himself with, including John Bolton and Mike Pompeo.
And with Secretary of State Pompeo now on his right hand and his national security advisor, John Bolton, you remember John Bolton, on his left side.
Giuliani even bragged that Trump's reimposition of suffocating U.S. sanctions on Iran could destabilize the economy and foment more protests.
With that gone, and sanctions back, we have a real chance of escalating these protests.
The Iran nuclear deal was negotiated over a period of 12 years. Its final version, known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, was agreed to by not just the United States and Iran, but also by China, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, and Germany. European Union Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini condemned the Trump administration for violating an agreement that is supported by the entire international community, and that was unanimously endorsed by the United Nations Security Council. Although President Trump falsely claimed that the JCPOA was insufficient to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons, citing a misleading and dishonest speech by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the EU foreign policy chief stressed that the deal has in reality worked perfectly well, as the International Atomic Energy Agency has verified numerous times.
Well, first of all, let me remind us all that the Atomic Agency, the IAEA, has certified 8 times that Iran is compliant with all the commitments included in the agreement. 8 times. Last time, just a few weeks ago. We have the international community strongly behind the full implementation of the deal that has prevented Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. So the deal not only will hold, but the deal doesn't belong to one country or another. It's a UN Security Council resolution, and the entire international community, from Russia to China to Japan to Latin America to Europe and the European Union, will continue to guarantee that the deal will hold, is implemented, and that Iranians will continue to stick to their nuclear commitments.
Trump's lawyer made it clear what he thought about this international agreement, pretending to spit on it as he called for regime change in Iran.
What do you think is going to happen to that agreement? That nuclear agreement? Yep.
Rudy Giuliani was the keynote speaker at the so-called Iran Freedom Convention for Human Rights and Democracy. This annual conference is a front for the opposition cult, the Mojahedin-e-Khalq, known by the acronym the MEK. The MEK is a bizarre cult of personality built around the married couple Masoud and Maryam Rajavi. The Islamist opposition group, which is even more authoritarian than the Iranian government, is extremely unpopular inside Iran, but claims to be the official voice of the Iranian opposition in exile. Giuliani referred to Maryam Rajavi as his hero and insisted that the MEK cult should be installed to replace Iran's government.
It was very moving for me to see the pictures, particularly of the early times with you, both here and in Paris, and with my hero, Maryam Rajavi. I would like to make it clear, here's the alternative. It's right in front of you. We saw her, Maryam Rajavi, right there. This is going to happen. Maryam Rajavi is going to lead the movement for reform. We're all going to be in Tehran pretty soon. And they have now speeded up dramatically our ability to bring freedom to Iran. I really believe that it is now in sight that we will have one of these conventions in Tehran.
The MEK has an extremely suspect history and is closely linked to Western governments. The group supported Saddam Hussein in his brutal war against Iran in the 1980s, in which the U.S. helped the Iraqi dictator use chemical weapons against Iranian and Kurdish civilians. In his speech before the MEK, Giuliani insisted that Iranians must be thankful to Donald Trump, although he failed to mention that the far-right anti-Muslim U.S. president has in fact banned Iranian nationals from entering the country.
But I'll tell you the person we really have to also thank, President Donald Trump.
Giuliani also boasted of Trump's bombing of Syria, and he insisted that the leaders of Syria, Iran, and Russia live in little holes and don't eat food.
President Trump's reaction to both very different. In the case of Syria, they crossed the red line and he bombed them. And the little cowards, and he had to stand up not just to puny little Assad, but he had to stand up to Russia and Putin, and he did. And they went back into their little holes where they belong. They belong in little holes in the ground. That was made for them, without any food, because I don't think they eat. I don't like them very much.
During his presidential campaign in 2016, Donald Trump opportunistically criticized belligerent U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. Yet now in power, his administration has only doubled down on the neoconservative dream of toppling Iran's government. The U.S. president's sabotage of the internationally agreed-upon Iran nuclear deal and his personal lawyer's reaffirmed commitment to regime change show how Donald Trump is hurtling down the path toward yet another catastrophic war. Reporting for The Real News, I'm Ben Norton.